And again, that wonderful little sounder which says, hey, it's the weekend, but please pay attention. We've got some fun things to do. Interesting Ideas comes your way Monday through Friday, and occasionally we'll take a Saturday or Sunday to interview a guest who has an interesting idea, perhaps a funny story to tell us, an interesting story to tell us, perhaps make us smile at the same time, might learn a little lesson. So we have one of those persons today, kind of an old-fashioned cowboy type of guy, and let me tell you, his name is Harry Alexander, and I've met him in Arizona. He's a long-time person there, and he was on the radio for a long time with his friend Emil, and in Arizona they had one of the top radio programs around. And it was called, appropriately, Voices of the West. And not only was it a great program, and now it's a great podcast, but it had a great little line. And Harry, welcome to the program, and start us off by telling what is the signature line for Voices of the West?
A radio program dedicated to the proposition that America was better off when its TV shows were about cowboys instead of lawyers.
For sure.
Thanks for having me on, Stan. Francie and I started, Francie started the show and I started working there with him. That was back when Marconi invented radio. And so we've been around that long.
He was quite a, he was a writer. He was a character, wasn't he?
Well, Emil, I've known Emil for many, many years before I'd started working with him and for him. And, he was a real gas to work with and work for. Originally, Emil's interest was in politics, Arizona politics and national politics and such. And I worked with him at the radio station here in Tucson, producing his talk show, which was a 3-hour talk show on politics. And he had a 4th hour, but that hour he dedicated to the West. And the reason he did that was because he got tired of talking about politics for that long, and believe it or not. And he was also a student of the Old West and absolutely loved anything and everything about the Old West. And so the show came about, and it was called Voices of the West.
Now, he had some acquaintances for years gone by, in the sense that he knew a lot of the old cowboys who came to Tucson to do movies and all that. Isn't that true?
I'm not sure how he knew everybody, but I imagine he did. We never got into that in the show. Basically, what the show talked about was the cowboy code. That code of the West. You know, there's a right and there's a wrong, and it's pretty doggone easy to see what that right is and what that wrong is. And, you know, if you're a good guy, you go to the way the right is. If you're a bad guy, you go that way. So, you know, I mean, it was pretty cut and clear and easy to figure out, in those times. At least we believe it was. Francie passed away a number of years ago, and so the show now is, as you mentioned, on the internet only. We used to be on the radio, but just internet now. And essentially, we talk with everybody and anybody who keeps that spirit of the Old West alive in the modern times. We do that by talking to people from the movies, the directors, actors, writers. We talk with Western genre authors. We talk with folks in the rodeo business. We talk with horse trainers. My God, we've talked with people about all kinds of different things that happened in the Old West. We talk about Old West art. Charlie Russell is a favorite topic on the show because we all enjoy Russell's art and writing. And so that's always a favorite topic on the program. But yeah, and we may even talk about such esoteric things like what kind of tie is that guy wearing? Because, hey, somebody wants to know.
And it makes people smile.
We think it does. What we see ourselves as doing is preserving the culture of the Old West, and that's important. It's history, because if you tend to forget history, then you tend to repeat those bad things about history instead of repeating the good things about history. And again, if you forget about history altogether, well, who knows what's going to happen. But you got to learn from it. And we think that was a time in our period. It was certainly a time for American expansion. Yes, there were all kinds of social problems during the era. But you have to look at the times in which all of these things happened. You cannot apply today's things and social mores to what it was like in the Old West, because that was more Victorian in its time than it would have been, anything else.
Well, there's two stories that I just like to fly by on this way. First of all, I've oftentimes said that everybody should be required to go through and watch the movie, read the book, Lonesome Dove. That's classic. And the reason is that one line, which I think everybody needs to know in life. And here he's dragging this guy he's dead, he's way back, and everybody can't figure out why he does it. And he has that wonderful line which characterizes the cowboy ethos. But I gave my word.
Yeah, right. That's it. Yeah.
I gave my word.
Back then, a handshake meant exactly what it meant. We agree to do whatever it is that we're going to do, good, bad, or indifferent. You knew it on a handshake. You did not need a bunch of lawyers codifying it in all kinds of legalese documents. Simple handshake did the job. And, obviously we can't go back to these kinds of times and relive those kinds of times. I read a story the other day where one of the Congress critters was complaining that women's rights are all gone now because of the overturning of Roe, and that Republicans are trying to take us back to 1953. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, actually. Pardon me. I don't see anything wrong with that period of time. Ike was president. Things were prosperous. Again, there were social issues. Let's not discount that. But life was so much easier then than it is now. And, you don't have to worry about this electronic thing or that electronic thing. Oh my God, I forgot to charge my phone. The phone used to stay home. So, I'll take the 1950s anytime.
Well, there was one other thing that I remember in getting going, because I began as going out to the Arizona. I became a bit of a fan of the West, and my next door neighbor was an old Korean veteran Marine Corsair pilot, and he was a tough guy, And he was a fan of Louis L'Amour, and he introduced me to Louis L'Amour, and I started to read his stuff. And in particular, I read his biography, which is an incredible story. He leaves home at 15 and is totally self-educated by riding the rails and reading and working, doing whatever it took. But in one of his books, the story centers around the fact that some rotten cowboy shot a woman, and he shot her in the back.
Oh, that's bad.
And the point was, that man was a marked man.
Yeah.
How dare you treat a woman? And it doesn't matter. She might have been a no good woman. She might have been a prostitute, but you don't hurt a woman.
No, and you don't shoot them, and you don't dry gulch them either.
That's right.
I mean, come on, that's just bad news. Every time we see that in one of the old time westerns. In fact, you don't see that in the old time westerns except very, very, very rarely. And and you don't see bad girls in the old westerns either. The women are not. I'm not sure how to put it. They're there, but they don't take an active role in being the hench person, if you will. Or there are a couple of times, so it's a couple of movies where the women are the leaders of the bad of the villains, but it doesn't happen that often.
As I point out, I'm familiar in my own family with some of the ideas of abuse, and I say the cowboy, he could be a bad cowboy, but he still tips his hat to the ladies.
Exactly.
That's
exactly. Right.
Right.
And you always tip your hat, and when you're walking on the boardwalk, you move aside for them.
That's right. Well, and then I think the other story I'd like to comment on. My brother is in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is just kind of on the edge of going west. That's where it was. And he called me the other day, and he said, I had a very interesting experience. And he said, you might relate to this. And I said, what happened? He said, well, it turns out that the high school rodeo competition, the National High School Rodeo Competition, was here in Lincoln. I said, oh, really? And he said, I was kind of interested in that, so I went out to see that. And he came back and he said, let me tell you, Stan, those are a different kind of people.
Yes. If you have ever met a ranch kid, meaning a kid who's grown up on a ranch, totally different. They are so polite. They are willing to do just about anything. They will follow a direction. They say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I mean, it is like the difference between night and day when you have a young person who has grown up on a ranch. Why is that? Because they know that they have to do, pardon me, they know that they have to do everything that is within their power in order to survive. And, because this is it. There is no cell phone out there. There might be, but my point being, ranch kids have a great understanding of life, taking care of cattle, or any other livestock. They just have a really good understanding of life and what it's about and what is important.
That's exactly what my brother, in amazement, said. Just those same kind of things. They, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and tip their hats and show them their animals. And he said, it just amazed me, because that's not that other kids are bad, but these kids were different in kind.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was a great Joel McCrea movie, for the life of me, I can't think of the title of it. And I can't think of who the child actor was. I want to say Dean Stockwell. I think that's right. But anyway, he's a rich kid and heading out west, and decides he's getting off of daddy's train and he wanders around. Well, the train leaves without him, and now he's stuck out in the wilderness. Well, here come the cowboys. They're doing a cattle drive, and Joel McCrea is in charge there and picks up the boy, and he starts to teach the boy about all this stuff. And the kid is like, I don't want to learn this. I don't need any of this nonsense. And McCrea says, yeah, you just continue on. You're doing fine. And by the end of the movie, he is a totally different person. He's been made into a ranch kid.
Well, and there's a part of me now that is suggesting that we could do more of that, because in some cases, One of my good friends, Mary Miller, is one of the head. They have a family, which is now a guest ranch. And she tells me the story that oftentimes how many of these guest ranches began is that wealthy families out in the East, they knew that their young women had been spoiled, because that's what happens is to young girls being raised as debutantes out in the East. So guess what they would do? They would
ship them out west.
They would ship them out west. That's right. That was part of their finishing school. And they had to work hard. They had to learn all of that. And so they went back. The idea was that Western experience, and that was what the ranch did for many years. It was a finishing school for young girls who better learn that if you're going to be a gentle lady, even in New York City, you better learn some of the manners of the West.
That's right. Well, think about it. Here's what ranch life is like. You're up at the crack of dawn. You have to be, because that's when you start your work, and depending on what livestock you have, or farm animals, you have to take care of them. Then you get to have breakfast. Then you go take care of other work details that have to be done. Mending fences, maybe digging fence post holes, maybe fixing something on the barn, maybe doing some painting, maybe going into town to pick up some supplies for this, that, or the other thing. And then that's when it's time for lunch. Then after lunch, you start again, and you work until the sun goes down. That's just how it is.
There are no days off.
No, there are no days off.
As my friend Russell True says, when you're on the ranch, you don't get holidays. You have to make a few.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
One of the things that I wanted very much to encourage, the reason I wanted you on is I think we need people to know that is something that perhaps needs to be not only said by that cute little line, but it needs to be restored in some of the ways that we're going to look at the world going forward.
Well, Westerns are starting to make a comeback. I'm a huge fan of the B-Western movies. Those are the ones done in the 1930s and 40s and early 50s. And I guess the reason I like them is because you can tell who's good and who's bad. And not only that, but they're highly entertaining, for me anyway. And when you look at the 1950s, when television was starting out and getting very popular, late 50s, early 60s, 7 out of 10 of the top shows were Westerns. What does that tell you, And then somebody in the programming department thought, we don't want to deal with this nonsense anymore. And so they started bringing out different kinds of programs. And that television kind of killed the Western. But, the Westerns were being made. Obviously, John Wayne made a bunch of them, and they were all great movies. And so we've got filmmakers now who are coming back to the genre, and while they're not necessarily doing it just like they did in the 30s and 40s, some of these movies are pretty doggone good. Some of them are pretty doggone bad too, but for the most part, the movies are pretty good.
Well, one of the things that I want people to know more and more, that I now have to move closer to my family here in Carolina, though I tell people and they say, "Where are you from?" I say, "Well, I'm from Carizona," because I may be located right here, but once you've gotten into the people and the times of the Western tradition and found good friends, and I have a number of friends in the Dude Ranch and the Western genre community, many of the writers. That's a part of your heart forever,
Oh, definitely. No question about it. I mean, our co-hosts on the podcast, Bunker DeFrance and Todd Roberts, these two guys are a hoot. Bunker, is Steve DeFrance is his actual name. He's a retired stuntman.
Yes.
He did High Chaparral television series. He's done a number of movies. He was in episodes of Gunsmoke and Death Valley Days. I mean, this guy knows the entertainment industry inside and out. And he's such a great resource, and he has great stories about some of these old guys and such. Our other co-host, Todd Walsh, is in Hollywood. His dad produced the Monty Walsh pictures, and as well as a number of other movies. And Todd has some great knowledge of actors and writers and whatnot, and it brings us that perspective. So, you know, and we all have that connection to the Old West. I'm not from Arizona. I grew up here. I was born in Chicago. Sorry about that. But moved to Arizona long time ago, and doing genealogical research and find out that my great grandfather served out here in Arizona during the Geronimo campaign. And so that's kind of cool, you know.
Incredible history and stories. One of my campaigns in life is to say, you know what we need to do is some of those poor children who are raised in some of the bad areas of the urban cities. It would be nice if somebody would say, you know what, let's take some of those, particularly young boys, and let's give them a cowboy experience and teach them some of those ways, and then say, hey, if you're really good at it, we'll give you your belt buckle and we'll give you a hat, and we'll say, okay, now you're a man, act like one.
You mentioned the buckle. That is one of the most prized possessions among cowboys, is that buckle. You know, Russell, our friend, mutual friend, he has buckles. Bunker has buckles. Todd has buckles. I don't have any buckles.
I don't either. But that was a symbol that a man had accomplished something.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And you know, they display that proudly for whatever that buckle happens to represent. And that's great, you know.
We should do more of it. That's right.
I think so.
Well, hey, this has been great. This has been fun. Okay, tell people how they can connect with you, or how they can, first of all, maybe go to a website, or they want to start listening to Voices of the West.
Well, the website is pretty doggone easy. voicesofthewest.net. voicesofthewest.net. And you can also listen to the program with a live stream every Saturday at 4 p.m. Arizona time. Now, Arizona doesn't do the time change like the rest of the nation, so it's always 4 o'clock Arizona time. So whatever time zone you happen to be in, that's where, I mean, we're at 4 p.m. If you're back east at this time of year, what is it, 3 hours difference now?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so sometimes it's 2 hours. Or another way to look at it, we're on the same time as California right now. In any event, you can listen to the show through the website, live stream. And if you don't want to do that, the podcasts are available at the website, voicesofthewest.net. Our podcasts are also available at Amazon Music, at Spotify, on Stitcher, and bunches of other places. Right. So those are, you know, on demand, as it were.
And that's a good way of also reminding people a little bit, why does Arizona not go on daylight time? Well, as we will tell you, we don't need to confuse things. We got plenty of daylight. We don't need to save any daylight.
You know, that was the interesting point. Back in when was this? I think the 1960s or 70s, Arizona, the legislature was able to pass a bill that took us out of the daylight saving time business, and it was all done by the drive-in movie lobby because, hey, couldn't start our movies until much later, and families can't come to the movies.
That's
well,
right.
Of course. So
and we're mavericks.
Yeah, that's how that came about.
See, again, you learn more here by accident than most places by design. Hey,
yeah.
This has been fun and good times, and you know what? I think we'll probably have to have you back. So I hope you'll do that.
All right, Stan. Appreciate it.
All the best. And there we go. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening this weekend. And perhaps you know of somebody who would be an interesting guest on Interesting Ideas. So I would look forward to hearing from you, and let us know how we can help you. What are some of the subjects you'd like us to talk about, and perhaps some of the things that are of interest to you. And perhaps you yourself would like to be a guest on Interesting Ideas and share some of the stories about how things could be better. Not only interesting, but better, as we deal with life as it is today with a sense of determination and cowboy courage, and perhaps a little bit of the spirit of the old cowboy way of life. Reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com. And today we go out with one of my favorite songs from Jim Jones on the Cowboy Way of Life.
Storm rolled in from the western sky. 2,000 head of steers took flight. Good night paid those boys to ride, and by damn they would, though some might die. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and growing strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. She's 10 years old on a stout bay horse. 300 years they guide her course, from the Spanish quest to the blue and gray, to what we call the cowboy way. Don't say goodbye, don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. To the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and going strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Rawhide and steel, hooves and horns, legacy to the yet unborn. A code that comes from a hard-lived life. Your destiny when you're born to ride. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and growing strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Don't say goodbye, don't say goodbye to the cowboy